My wife decided to celebrate her birthday at home and invited the whole family. During the toast, my wife's father shouted, "It's time to tell the truth. My daughter deserves a real man, not this imposter." Another man entered from the garden, holding a flower bouquet and a ring. My wife smiled, and so did I. What a curious surprise, father-in-law. But mine will surprise you even more. Everyone turned when I opened what I was carrying. You know how some husbands dread their wife's birthday because they have to find the perfect gift? Yeah, well, I apparently decided to take that concept and turn it into a full-blown hostage situation by hosting the entire party at our house. Let me tell you, there's a special kind of stupidity in thinking, how bad could it be? When your wife is the kind of woman who considers a small gathering anything under the population of Rhode Island. Tessa had said she wanted something intimate, which in her dictionary meant 70 people, 3 photographers, a bartender, a jazz band, and her cousin's friend, who claimed to be an influencer, but mainly just took selfies with food she didn't pay for. The morning of the party, I woke up to what sounded like a construction crew in our living room. Balloons, floral arches, a custom ice sculpture shaped like the letter T. I didn't even know that was possible. The decorator barked orders like she was leading an army. "Mr. Garner, please move the couch," she snapped, like I was an unpaid intern in my own house. I moved it, because marriage teaches you that sometimes survival is about picking your battles and not dying on the hill of, "That's my couch." Meanwhile, Tessa was upstairs in a silk robe, sipping champagne, acting like she was being interviewed for Vogue. "Baby, can you make sure the cake arrives before 4?" she called down the stairs. "Yes, Your Majesty," I muttered, pulling at my collar as I unpacked plates. She was on FaceTime with her mother, Margie, who had opinions on everything from the lighting to how Miles should have worn contacts because glasses make him look tired. Yeah, I look tired because I've been working all week and setting up your daughter's vanity festival, ma'am. But sure, let's blame the glasses. By noon, I was sweating through my t-shirt, still inflating balloons like some kind of desperate clown for hire. The caterers arrived with trays of canapes that looked like appetizers for ants. "These are bite-sized," the chef explained proudly. "Yeah," I said, "if the bites belong to toddlers." He didn't laugh. I didn't care. I was already regretting my life choices. Around 3, Tessa floated downstairs in her gold sequin dress, the kind of outfit that makes everyone else in the room feel underdressed and poor. "What do you think?" she asked, spinning dramatically. "You look incredible," I said, because even though we were rocky, I wasn't suicidal. She smiled that practice smile of hers, the one she used for social media posts and tax audits, and said, "Let's make tonight perfect, okay?" That word, perfect, hung in the air like a bad omen. By 5, the doorbell started ringing like the world's most annoying alarm clock. Guests poured in, all air kisses and backhanded compliments. "Oh, Miles, this is lovely," said one of Tessa's cousins, scanning the room like an appraiser. "Did you hire someone, or did you actually do this yourself?" I smiled. Just me. A husband's love and a Home Depot card can do wonders. She chuckled awkwardly and walked away, probably to judge the floral arrangements. Tessa's dad, Mr. Darnell, strutted in wearing a white linen suit like he'd just returned from closing a billion-dollar deal, or a drug bust. He gave me that firm handshake that said, "I still don't think you're good enough for my daughter." Behind him was Margie, looking like she'd been born annoyed. "You should smile more," she said immediately. "You look tired." There it was again. I grinned. By 6 p.m., our house didn't look like a home anymore, and it looked like the after party of the Grammys sponsored by Judgment and Bad Intentions. Every square inch screamed money. But not my money, no. This was the fake it till you break it kind of display my wife and her family thrived on. The scent of overpriced candles mixed with champagne and the faint aroma of emotional exhaustion. Jazz floated through the air, classy enough to disguise the passive aggression brewing in every corner. I stood near the kitchen island, trying to look like a man in control, but really, I was just a glorified bartender in my own damn house. Guests kept arriving like the party had an open bar, which, to my eternal regret, it did. My father-in-law, Mr. Darnell, strutted around the living room like he owned the place, giving political handshake smiles to anyone with a pulse. The man had that vibe of someone who still bragged about playing varsity football in 1987, even though his knees now made popping sounds every time he sat down. He clinked his glass like some self-appointed Toastmaster general, already enjoying the spotlight. "This is what success looks like," he said, spreading his arms wide, conveniently ignoring the fact that I paid for everything he was showing off. Tessa, in her gold-sequined dress, floated through the crowd like she was auditioning for a fragrance commercial. Soft smile, twirl, hair flip, fake laugh. She kissed cheeks and hugged people she hated, while I replenished ice buckets like a man who didn't exist. "You're doing great, sweetie," she said once, walking by me like I was the hired help. And honestly, I might as well have been. Her mom, Margie, held court near the couch, surrounded by women clutching mimosas like emotional support animals. I overheard her say, loud enough for half the block to hear, "Well, Tessa married down for love, bless her heart." My jaw clenched so hard, I swear my molars filed for divorce. I caught Eli's eye across the room. He'd already raided the shrimp platter and was now nursing a drink like he owned shares in the bar. He walked over, smirking. "Man, they treat you like the help." "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice even, "but the help's about to flip the script." He grinned, knowing that tone in my voice meant something was brewing. "Just say the word. I'll pull the fire alarm." I laughed under my breath. "Not yet. Let them enjoy their evening." It's about to get memorable. The house buzzed with fake laughter and the kind of conversations that made you wish for sudden, selective deafness. Everyone was complimenting Tessa like she'd just discovered electricity. "You look radiant. You're glowing. What's your secret?" As if her secret wasn't Sephora, an inherited entitlement. I stood in the corner with my drink, watching the performance. Every marriage has moments when you realize the person you're with is a stranger wearing your spouse's face. That was me, standing there, watching my wife, realizing I didn't recognize the person she'd become. She used to be fun, goofy, human. Now she was polished, robotic, always on brand. Then there was her dad again, doing his rounds like a politician desperate for donations. He had that look, the one people get before they drop something dramatic. His phone buzzed every few minutes, and each time, he'd smirk at the screen like he was texting the plot twist of my life. I told myself to chill, but my gut whispered, "Brace yourself." Around 6:45, the caterer approached me, asking if I wanted the appetizers refilled. "Sure," I said, because apparently I was still the logistics department. "Oh, and the guests are asking for more champagne," she added. "Of course they are," I muttered. I went to grab another crate from the back room when I heard someone behind me say, "Miles, can I get a whiskey neat?" It was Tessa's cousin Jared, the kind of guy who still called women chicks and thought crypto made him an economist. "Bars self-serve," I said flatly, walking away. He chuckled. "Damn, touchy tonight." "Nah," I said over my shoulder, and just allergic to freeloaders. I passed by the living room again, where Margie was laughing too loud, probably at her own joke, while Mr. Darnell was chatting up a cluster of people about legacy and class. I swear the man could turn a trip to the grocery store into a TED Talk about leadership. "You see," he was saying, "a man's worth is measured by how he provides for his family." I raised my glass from across the room, catching his eye. "Couldn't agree more," I said with a smile that had about as much warmth as a tax audit. His smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly. "Glad we're on the same page, son," he replied. Oh, we were on the same page, all right. He just didn't know I was the author. By 7, the energy had shifted. The conversations grew tighter, whispers more frequent. You know that weird static in the air before a storm hits? That was our living room. Something was brewing behind all the smiles. I caught Tessa on her phone again, stepping into the hallway. I followed her with my eyes, not my feet. Been married long enough to know when following a woman mid-text is a rookie mistake. She returned a minute later, adjusting her dress, pretending nothing happened. But that smirk, God, that smirk, was the same one she wore when she told me, "I'm just having dinner with coworkers." Eli came back over, munching on something that was probably meant to be decorative. "You good?" he asked quietly. "Define good," I said. "You look like you're one jazz solo away from throwing someone through a window." "Tempting," I said, "but not tonight. Tonight's her show." He raised an eyebrow. "You're way too calm. Should I be worried?" "Probably." The doorbell rang again, and in walked Ryan, the tall, smug coworker I'd clocked earlier. Perfect hair, designer suit, and that overconfident swagger of a man who moisturizes twice a day and calls himself an alpha. I didn't even need to ask who he was there for. The way Tessa's eyes lit up when she saw him said it all. She excused herself from a conversation and glided toward him like gravity itself had shifted. They hugged. Too long, too close. I looked around the room. No one else seemed to notice, or maybe they just didn't care. Margie clapped her hands like she'd just spotted a rare species. "Ryan! Oh, you made it," she squealed, hugging him too. "Of course," he said smoothly, flashing a smile that could melt ice. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I took a slow sip of my drink and, fighting the urge to pour it over his head. Mr. Darnell, watching from his spot by the bar, looked oddly satisfied. He and Ryan exchanged a nod that didn't sit right with me. My stomach tightened. Something was definitely up. Then, as if the universe wanted to rub salt in it, one of Tessa's friends grabbed a mic and announced, "Everyone, let's get ready for the birthday toast." The jazz faded into a low hum. People gathered around the dining table, glasses filled, smiles plastered. Tessa stood beside me, holding her champagne flute, looking like she'd just won an award. "You okay?" she whispered, sensing my tension. "Peachy," I said. "Just curious how many people it takes to celebrate your existence." She gave me that warning look. "Don't ruin this, Miles." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, raising my glass. And that's when I noticed her father again. He was standing behind the crowd, phone in hand, eyes gleaming like he was about to announce a plot twist. The man was vibrating with smug energy. I didn't know what he was planning, but I knew it wasn't good. He kept checking his phone, then looking toward the back door, as if waiting for someone. My heart started pounding. Not fear, just that instinct you get when the chessboard's about to change. "Everything okay?" Eli whispered beside me. "Yeah," I said, eyes fixed on Mr. Darnell. "I think the show's about to start." And I was right, because while everyone thought this night was about champagne, birthday wishes, and fake love, I could feel it in my bones. Something was about to explode. But little did they know, I had already started planning the sequel. You ever been in one of those moments where everything slows down and you know something bad's about to happen, but you can't stop it because you're too busy pretending everything's fine? Yeah, that was me. Standing in a room full of people holding champagne glasses, wearing my best fake smile, while my gut screamed like an air raid siren. The lights dimmed just enough to make the crowd look softer, but not enough to hide their judgmental faces. Tessa was beside me, gleaming in her gold dress like she'd been dipped in self-confidence and narcissism. The jazz band quieted, the chatter died down, and for about 2 seconds, everything felt calm. Then I opened my mouth. "Ladies and gentlemen," I started, trying to sound charming, "thank you all for coming to celebrate my wife's birthday. To my beautiful, brilliant—" I didn't get to finish, because that's when her father decided he was auditioning for family drama, the musical. He slammed his hand on the table so hard the glasses rattled. "It's time to tell the truth!" he bellowed. Everyone froze like mannequins in shock. Even the saxophonist stopped mid-note, the poor guy holding his instrument like it had personally offended him. I blinked, half expecting someone to laugh. But no, this old man was dead serious. "Excuse me?" I asked, still half smiling, because I genuinely thought he might have had too much champagne. "My daughter deserves a real man, not this imposter," he declared, pointing at me like I was Satan himself. The crowd gasped, because of course they did. Everyone loves a live scandal more than dessert. I chuckled awkwardly. "Imposter? Sir, I'm pretty sure my driver's license says it's me." Nervous laughter from the crowd. I was hoping that would diffuse the situation. Nope. And then the back door opened. Now, if this were a movie, this is where you'd hear that dramatic dun-dun-dun sound effect. A man walked in from the garden. Perfect hair, smug grin, bouquet in one hand, ring box in the other. I swear, I almost laughed out loud because this was so cliche it could have been a reality TV proposal. The guy had that face that screamed, "I use whitening strips and call women baby girl." He was wearing a suit so shiny it could have blinded an astronaut. "Meet Ryan," Mr. Darnell announced proudly, like he just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. "A man who actually earns 7 figures." The jazz band didn't know what to do, so they just stood there, frozen like background extras in a movie scene that suddenly changed genres. The guests gasped again. Honestly, if gasping were an Olympic sport, this family would win gold. Tessa looked stunned for half a second, then smiled. Not the embarrassed, oh no kind of smile, but the yes, I was hoping this would happen kind. Her eyes lit up like she'd just won a new car on The Price is Right. I stared at Ryan, then at her father, then at Tessa. And for a brief, glorious moment, I considered that maybe this was all a weird prank. Like, maybe Ashton Kutcher was about to pop out yelling, "You've been punked!" But nope. This was real life, and I was standing in the middle of my own living room, watching another man walk in with flowers and a damn engagement ring. Ryan stepped forward confidently, the kind of guy who's been told, "You're so different," by enough women to start believing his own hype. He looked at me like I was a doormat. He'd just wiped his shoes on. "Sorry, man," he said casually, "but some things are meant to happen." Oh, he had lines. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I was seconds away from either punching him or winning an Oscar for Best Husband in a psychological thriller. I leaned against the table, keeping my tone calm. "You rehearsed that, didn't you?" He blinked. "What?" "The line," I said, nodding. "You definitely practiced that in the mirror." A few people snickered. He wasn't expecting me to talk back. That's the thing about men like Ryan. They expect you to break, not banter. Mr. Darnell puffed up his chest. "My daughter deserves stability. She deserves a man who can who can take her places." I tilted my head, like the unemployment line, because you're still making payments on that second mortgage I covered for you, right? His face twitched. "Don't you dare." "No, please," I said, holding up my hand. "Go on, this is your show, remember? I'm just the broke husband who apparently bought the stage you're standing on." The guests were eating it up. Half of them were pretending to sip champagne, but were really holding their glasses just to look less obvious about eavesdropping. Tessa, meanwhile, was visibly torn between embarrassment and defiance. "Dad, this isn't the time," she hissed. But she didn't look at me. She looked at him, Ryan. That was all I needed to see. My gut had been right for weeks, and now it was flashing neon signs saying, "Told you so." Ryan set down the bouquet on the counter and opened the ring box like he was unveiling the Holy Grail. The diamonds sparkled so hard it made the room collectively inhale. "Tessa," he said dramatically, "I know this isn't traditional, but I can't keep pretending. You deserve better. You deserve me." Somewhere in the background, someone whispered, "Oh my God," like this was the finale of The Bachelor. I turned to Tessa. She was smiling. Actually smiling. Like she was enjoying the chaos. "Ryan, this isn't," she started, but he cut her off. "I love you. I always have, and I'm not afraid to show it." I wanted to clap. Seriously. The man had guts. Wrong timing, wrong place, wrong woman, but guts nonetheless. The silence in the room was thick enough to chew. I looked around. Eli was watching from the bar, mouth open, holding his drink like it was popcorn. My cousin whispered, "You gonna hit him or hug him?" I grinned. "Neither," I said quietly, because the funny thing about betrayal is it only hurts when you're not ready for it. And me, I'd been ready. See, here's the part everyone missed. I'd felt this coming for months. The coldness, the fake smiles, the sudden work trips. So while they were busy playing romantic comedy in my living room, I'd been quietly writing the thriller ending. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to swing fists. I just needed to let the show play out until it was my turn to speak. Ryan got down on one knee right there on my rug. The rug I bought, mind you, and held up the ring. "Tessa, will you—" "Hold that thought," I said, stepping forward. He looked up at me, annoyed. "Excuse me, we're having a moment." "Yeah," I said. "In my house." I smiled at the crowd, gesturing toward him. "Ladies and gentlemen, can we get a round of applause for this man's commitment to bad timing?" A few nervous chuckles broke out. I mean, I gotta admire the confidence. Proposing to a married woman at her birthday party? That's bold. Dumb, but bold. Mr. Darnell started to say something, but I raised a hand. "No, no, sir. You've had your speech. It's only fair I get mine." Tessa opened her mouth, but I didn't let her talk. "You see," I said, pacing slowly, "when I was planning this little soiree, I thought, what could possibly go wrong? Turns out, everything. But that's okay. Because surprises make life fun, right? My tone was light, but inside I was coiled tight as a spring. Ryan stood up, still holding the ring, clearly irritated that his big moment was being hijacked. Look, man, you're embarrassing yourself, he said. Actually, I replied smoothly, I think you're doing that for both of us. A few guests laughed outright this time. I turned to Tessa. So this was your intimate birthday party? You, me, 70 guests, and your backup husband? Her face flushed red. It's not what it looks like. Then you might want to explain why Ryan from accounting just proposed to you in our living room, while your dad provides narration. She looked helplessly at her father, who was now sweating bullets. And that's when I smiled. Calmly, coolly, dangerously. Well, what a curious surprise, father-in-law, I said, adjusting my sleeve. But mine will surprise you even more. The crowd murmured. Even Ryan looked uneasy now. He didn't know it, but I had already started pulling the strings. See, while they were all focused on the drama, I was already mentally flipping through the receipts, literally and figuratively. I didn't raise my voice, didn't break character, I just smiled like the man who knew the plot twist no one saw coming. The truth was simple, this wasn't their stage anymore, and it was mine. So when people tell me later that I handled it like a pro, I tell them this. No, I handled it like a man who finally realized he was surrounded by actors and decided to steal the damn show. There's this moment right before a thunderstorm when the air feels heavy, like the sky's holding its breath. That's exactly how it felt, standing there in my own living room, while Ryan, the human hair gel, got down on one knee with a ring, proposing to my married wife in front of 70 witnesses and a jazz band that had clearly stopped caring about their hourly rate. I could see people whispering, recording, and clutching their champagne like it was popcorn at a live drama. And me? I just stood there, oddly calm, like I'd been expecting the universe to pull this stunt, and was honestly impressed by the creativity. Maybe because I'd seen it coming for months. Maybe because when you've been humiliated long enough, shock starts taking weekends off. But mostly because I'd been preparing for this exact scene, just not with the ending they expected. See, I'm not the kind of man who starts swinging or shouting. That's too easy. I prefer chess over checkers. And these clowns didn't even realize they were already standing on my board. Ryan was mid-sentence, his fake sincerity oozing out like bad cologne. Tessa, I know this is unorthodox, but my love for you... Yeah, it's definitely unorthodox, I interrupted deadpan. A few people snorted, which earned them daggers from Margie, my ever-judgmental mother-in-law, who had her hand over her chest like she'd just witnessed a crime scene. Her husband, Mr. Darnell, was standing tall and puffed up, trying to look dignified, though his face was doing that thing where arrogance meets constipation. Miles, he said loudly, this doesn't concern you anymore. I turned to him slowly, like a teacher about to correct a particularly stupid student. Oh, it does, I said. See, that's my wife you're auctioning off like she's a limited edition stock option. And this is my house. So technically, it's my business. And my real estate. His smirk faltered, just a little. He didn't know how right I was. I looked at Tessa. Her eyes darted between me and Ryan like a ping-pong ball. Babe, please don't make this worse, she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it, I said softly. Worse implies it was good to begin with. That earned a laugh from Eli, who was watching from the bar with his phone recording like he'd just been gifted a front-row seat to karma. The energy in the room was shifting. People were whispering now, some rooting for me, some for the scandal. Either way, I had an audience. And I do love an audience. Now I hadn't planned for this exact moment. No sane person plans for their wife to be proposed to at her own birthday party. But I'd been making my quiet moves long before tonight. I'd started noticing Tessa's coworker texts around 6 months ago. Around the same time, she started sleeping with her phone face down and calling me babe in that overly nice tone people use when they're guilty. Most men would have gone straight for confrontation, not me. I went for documentation. I'm a software developer by trade. Logic, systems, patterns, and patience are my bread and butter. And if marriage teaches you anything, it's that sometimes patience is the best weapon. So while she thought I was losing myself in late-night coding sessions, I was actually getting my ducks in a row. Quietly. Thoroughly. I sold my software company around the same time, a little tech startup that Tessa always mocked because it wasn't a real business. She wanted me to be the kind of guy who wore designer suits and bragged about deals over brunch. Instead, I preferred hoodies and building products that actually worked. Joke's on her. The not real business sold for 7 figures. And because I knew her family, I didn't announce it. I kept it quiet, tucked away in a new holding company under my name, Reed Holdings LLC. Sound fancy, right? It should. Because that LLC didn't just hold my new accounts. It held this house, the house she kept calling ours in front of people, but mine whenever she was mad. Yeah, funny thing about property titles, they're not based on vibes. It wasn't just the house either. Her parents' home, the one in Cascade Heights, they'd refinanced it 3 years ago to fund her mom's luxury boutique that somehow never broke even. Guess who co-signed the refinance because they trusted family? Yours truly. Guess whose name is quietly sitting on that lien? Also, yours truly. I'm petty like that, but with a degree. So yeah, as Ryan was kneeling there, ring trembling, and Tessa looked like a deer caught between love and a good lighting angle, I felt peaceful. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. If anything, I was almost amused. These people were about to realize they'd been performing on my stage the whole time, and the curtain was about to drop. Hard. Ryan looked up at me, clearly annoyed that I wasn't playing the role of humiliated husband. Dude, do you mind? This is kind of an important moment. I tilted my head. Yeah, I can see that. Just wondering, did you bring a U-Haul with that ring, or were you planning to move into my house empty-handed? Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. Mr. Darnell stepped forward. Or his voice raised. You're being disrespectful. You invited a man to propose to my wife in my living room, and I'm the one being disrespectful, I said. Damn, sir, the math ain't mathing. Tessa finally snapped. Stop it, Miles. You're embarrassing me. I turned to her slowly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Tessa, sweetheart, if you're embarrassed now, you might want to take a seat for what's coming next. That shut her up, and I swear even Ryan's smirk twitched. I looked around at the crowd, friends, coworkers, family, and people who'd treated me like I was furniture for years. You all came here tonight to celebrate Tessa, right? I said loudly. Good, because tonight she's getting the one thing she's always wanted, attention, and I've decided to give it to her, uninterrupted. Eli whispered from behind me, oh, it's happening, and someone near the kitchen muttered, man, this is better than Netflix. But I didn't go nuclear just yet. No, I'm not an idiot. You don't waste a good climax before Act 2. I let the tension hang there, thick and electric. Then I smiled, calm as ever. You know what, Ryan? Go ahead. Finish your little proposal. I don't want to interrupt destiny or whatever rom-com fantasy this is. His face lit up again, thinking I'd backed down. Thank you, he said, turning to Tessa with a smug grin. As I was saying, he reached for her hand again, but she hesitated this time. Maybe it was the tone in my voice. Maybe it was the quiet confidence she wasn't used to seeing from me. Either way, she didn't look so sure anymore. And honestly, that was the best part. Watching her realize that maybe, just maybe, she'd miscalculated. That maybe the man she'd written off as predictable had been 3 steps ahead. Ryan fumbled through his speech, talking about love and destiny and our future together. Half the room looked uncomfortable now, unsure if they were witnessing romance or a career-ending scandal. Margie was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, playing the supportive mother. And Mr. Darnell was still glaring at me, probably wondering why I wasn't crumbling. Spoiler, I don't crumble. I build. When Ryan finished his cringe monologue, the room didn't applaud. They just stared, waiting for me. Even he looked unsure. You don't have anything to say? He finally asked, straightening his tie. Oh, I do, I said, smiling wide. But not yet. I think surprises are best delivered with proper lighting. I motioned toward the jazz band, who looked more confused than anyone. You boys mind taking 5? I think we're shifting genres. They nodded eagerly, probably thrilled to escape. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my watch. Well, would you look at that? Almost time for the cake. I turned to Tessa. Sweetheart, I know you wanted a night to remember, and I promise, you'll never forget this one. I didn't say another word. I didn't have to, because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the drum beat before the explosion. And as I walked over to the corner of the room, picked up the briefcase I'd placed there earlier, and set it on the table with a quiet click, I saw Mr. Darnell's smirk fade completely. He recognized that briefcase. He'd seen it once before, at the meeting where I helped restructure his debt. So when people ask me later why I look so calm while my life publicly imploded, I tell them this because I wasn't losing my life. I was just clearing the stage for the reveal. And in that moment, surrounded by gasping guests and the ghosts of fake affection, I realized something that made me smile wider than I had in months. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage. It's composure. The kind that makes your enemies realize too late that the game they thought they were winning, you've been the referee all along. The air in the room had changed. You could feel it, like the oxygen had been swapped out for static and expectation. People weren't whispering anymore. They were waiting. 70 pairs of eyes locked on me as I set my briefcase on the table next to the untouched birthday cake, the one that had been waiting for candles and laughter, but was about to get front row seats to marital warfare instead. My wife Tessa stood near the couch, frozen somewhere, between defiance and panic. Ryan, the walking LinkedIn profile in a tailored suit, still had the ring box in his hand, but his grin was wilting. Even Mr. Darnell, the self-declared patriarch of self-importance, looked unsure now. His lips were moving like he was silently trying to do damage control, but he'd already lost the mic. The room had become my stage, and for once, I wasn't the background character in someone else's power trip. I adjusted my cufflinks because petty victories deserve presentation. You know, I started, my tone casual, conversational even. I wasn't planning on a speech tonight. I figured I'd just say something sweet about my wife, maybe crack a joke about how she still can't cook rice without burning it. Nervous chuckles. But since we're apparently turning this into a live episode of Maury, the birthday edition, let's roll with it. Tessa tried to interrupt. Miles, this isn't... Oh, it is, I cut in, calm but sharp enough to slice through her pretense. You see, Tessa, I may not have your father's business instincts, I said, air quoting, but I do know a thing or two about planning. And unlike you, I believe in documentation. I flipped open the briefcase, the leather creaking like it was savoring the moment. Inside were neatly organized folders, labeled and clipped, because if you're going to drop truth bombs, you might as well make them look professional. These, I said, holding one up, are tonight's party favors, personalized, color-coded even. Someone in the back snorted. I smirked. You'll each get your turn. But let's start with the man of the hour. Well, the other man of the hour. I glanced at Ryan. He tried to stand taller like he wasn't sweating through his $1,000 suit. Relax, I said. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to educate. Tessa's mother, Margie, spoke up. Miles, this is completely inappropriate. Yeah, you're right, I said, grinning. Inappropriate was when your daughter let Ryan rehearse his proposal speech in my living room. I'm just doing the closing ceremony. The audience laughed, low and uneasy. Even the jazz band, huddled by the door, was watching like they'd just gotten a raise. I reached for the first document and held it up for the crowd like I was about to announce the next big award. Ladies and gentlemen, I HUD, this right here is the deed to this house. You know, the one Tessa's parents like to call our family home. Bought 3 years ago. Paid off 2 years ago, under Reed Holdings, LLC. That's me, in case you were wondering. Gasps rippled across the room. People pulled out phones because in 2025, no one believes a good scandal unless they record it in 4K. I looked straight at Mr. Darnell, who was starting to lose his signature smugness. Sir, I said politely, you've spent years reminding me that your daughter married down. So I thought it'd be fair for everyone here to know that you're currently living in a home that's technically mine too, since your Cascade Heights property is registered under the same holding company. He turned pale. That's impossible, he barked. Oh, I agree, I said smoothly. It should be impossible. But when you needed an investor to save your house from foreclosure 3 years ago, who do you think your daughter begged for help? Spoiler alert, it wasn't Ryan. The guests murmured again, louder this time. Margie's fan fluttered like she was trying to cool off a panic attack. Tessa looked like someone had hit pause on her brain. You had no right, she began, but I raised a finger. Correction, I had every right. It was my money, my signature, and my company. I even paid for your mother's boutique relaunch last year. How's that going, by the way? I heard the only thing selling there is your dignity. Someone near the fireplace coughed to hide a laugh. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear, but I wasn't done. Now, I know this looks like I'm grandstanding, I continued, but this isn't revenge, it's education. Because apparently, some people in this room have been under the impression that I'm just a soft, naive, broke husband. And while I do enjoy a good underdog story, I thought it was time we updated the narrative. I picked up another folder. Tessa, you remember that joint account you drained last month for your Miami work trip? Funny thing, those hotel receipts didn't match your company's itinerary, but don't worry, sweetie. Sweetheart, I kept the receipts for your peace of mind. I held up a statement. The Ritz-Carlton, Miami, Ocean View Suite, room service for two. And oh, look at this, champagne charged to the room at 11:42 p.m. Must have been one hell of a team meeting. The room went silent. Someone whispered, "Oh, damn," under their breath. Tessa's face went red, then white. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "I am making clarity," I replied. "You made the scene the moment you brought your side project to your birthday party." I turned to Ryan, whose smile had fully evaporated. "You know what's crazy, man? You really could have had her. All you had to do was wait another month. But you got greedy. What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he snapped. "Oh, just that she signed a prenup 3 years ago," I said lightly. "And since I kept impeccable records, she gets, let's see, here it is, absolutely nothing if she's caught cheating. So thanks for fast-tracking the paperwork, champ." The guests exploded, some gasping, some laughing. A few recording like this was courtroom drama on HBO. Eli, bless his chaotic soul, raised his glass. "To Ryan," he called out, "the fastest fiancé to lose both a girl and a house in under 10 minutes. The room erupted into uncomfortable giggles. Mr. Darnell stepped forward, his face crimson. "You think this little performance changes anything? You're finished in this family." "Sir," I said, smiling, "you can't fire me from a family I didn't apply to join. But I'll tell you what, you might want to check your email tomorrow morning. Your accountant will explain why your boutique's lease renewal bounced." Turns out, the landlord decided not to renew contracts with businesses tied to unethical practices. And guess what? I own that property too. Margie's hand flew to her chest. "You wouldn't dare." "Margie," I said sweetly, "you're confusing me with your daughter. I don't dare, I do." The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as awkward tension. Tessa finally found her voice. "Miles, please, stop this." There was something almost human in her tone now. Fear, desperation, maybe regret. I almost felt bad, almost. But then, I remembered the late-night texts, the fake business trips, the way she'd looked at Ryan tonight like he was the prize and I was the placeholder. And suddenly, I didn't feel bad at all. I closed the briefcase with a soft click and looked around the room. You know, I wasn't going to say any of this. I was just going to let you all enjoy your night, eat cake, pretend we're some picture-perfect family. But since someone decided to turn my living room into a soap opera audition, I figured, why not give you all the director's cut? Ryan finally found his courage, or stupidity, hard to tell which, and said, "You're just bitter because she doesn't love you." I laughed. "You're right, Ryan, she doesn't." And I stopped loving her the minute she started treating my kindness like weakness. But see, that's the beauty of letting people underestimate you. They never see the trap until it's already shut. I walked them toward the kitchen where the cake still sat untouched, picked up the knife, and cut myself a slice. "Now," I said, voice calm again, "who's ready for dessert? Because I promise, the real sweet stuff's coming next." The crowd didn't move, frozen between disbelief and admiration. Mr. Darnell looked like he wanted to faint, but couldn't afford the drama. Tessa just stood there, eyes glassy, mascara trembling on the edge of collapse. Ryan muttered something about lawyers under his breath and backed toward the door. I licked frosting off the knife and smiled. "Good idea, man, you're gonna need one." And with that, I turned back to the guests, half horrified, half entertained, and gave them a small bow. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to Tessa's birthday bash. Hope you all enjoyed the live entertainment. Don't forget to grab a truth bomb on your way out." Somewhere in the back, Eli started clapping. Then a few others joined. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the one standing in someone else's shadow. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And damn, it felt good to let it rain. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels surgical, like the air's been stripped of sound, waiting for the cut. That's what I felt, standing there in my living room. watching 70 overdressed guests and one underdressed conscience stare at me like I just live streamed the apocalypse. My wife's face, my soon-to-be ex-wife's face, was drained of color, frozen in that awful mix of shock and calculation. The kind of look you see on poker players who suddenly realize the chips aren't theirs. Ryan, still clutching that damn bouquet, looked like an actor who'd forgotten his line mid-performance. His smile twitched like a dying neon sign. And her father? He was blinking at the floor, probably trying to process how the man he'd mocked for years had just publicly audited his pride. I should have felt angry. I should have felt broken. But what I actually felt was free. The kind of free you don't even realize you've been missing until the cage door falls off. I took a slow sip of champagne, her father's imported brand, of course, and said, calm as ever, anyone else want to confess something before we move on to dessert? The room stayed dead quiet, like the collective oxygen had packed its things and left. Margie finally broke the silence, clutching her pearls like she was auditioning for a soap opera. You're cruel, she hissed. You've humiliated your wife, our family, yourself. I set my glass down gently. Ma'am, with all due respect, humiliation's kind of a family tradition here. I just upgraded the presentation. That earned a few muffled laughs from the younger cousins in the back, the ones who'd been forced to attend out of obligation, but were now witnessing the best live entertainment since the Super Bowl halftime show. Then I turned to Ryan, who looked like he was about to faint or flee. Maybe both. You good, buddy? You look pale. Not used to standing under real light? He swallowed. Man, you didn't have to drag everyone into this. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't have to? You proposed to my wife at her birthday party. In my house, using flowers I bought. I think dragging everyone into it was already on your agenda, Mr. Smooth Jazz. A few guests actually snorted. Someone whispered, damn, he's not wrong. And I swear, even the caterer had stopped pretending to check trays. Tessa finally found her voice again. Miles, please, enough. We can talk privately. Privately. I cut in. No, sweetheart. You turned my home into a stage. You don't get privacy after selling tickets. She clenched her fists. You're enjoying this. No, I said softly, locking eyes with her. I'm remembering this. That shut her up faster than any curse could. I reached back into the briefcase, flipping through the stack until I found another folder. Oh, almost forgot. You remember your little investment account? The one you told me you used for business conferences? She blinked. What about it? I held up a statement. Turns out it's not in your name. It's under Reed Holdings again, meaning every spa trip and hotel seminar you charged went through my cards. So technically, you were cheating on me with my own money. Now that's poetic. Her mother gasped so hard, you'd think she'd seen a ghost. You're lying? She said, voice trembling. I smiled politely, like a bank teller explaining overdraft fees. Page 3, line 4, ma'am. Luxury Getaways Miami. You might recognize that date. It's the same weekend your daughter claimed she was mentoring new interns. Unless the intern's name was Ryan, and the mentorship involved champagne and room service for 2. That was the breaking point. A low buzz of whispers spread through the guests. Phones were out. Screens were recording. For once, the truth was trending. Ryan dropped the bouquet onto the floor. It hit the tile with a soft thud, like the final punctuation mark to his humiliation. I swear, the sound was beautiful. Tessa's voice cracked. You've planned this. No, miss, I said simply. Prepared for this. You planned the betrayal. I just decided to RSVP. Then came the best part. The look. That split second when she realized she wasn't just caught, she was cornered. The same woman who'd once rolled her eyes at my late nights and called me too predictable now stood blinking in a reality I'd engineered. What do you want from me? She asked, voice quivering. Nothing, I said, my tone so calm it scared even me. Absolutely nothing. 'Cause for the first time in years, I don't owe you anything. Not money, not love, not silence. Her father finally spoke, voice cracking like dry wood. You'll regret this, boy. You've made enemies tonight. I turned to him, smiling. No, sir. I made boundaries. He tried to glare, but you could see it. The doubt, the fear. The man who'd spent a decade treating me like the help now realized He might actually need me to keep his house from foreclosure. I set the papers down on the table next to the cake knife. You know, I said, I almost canceled this party. Something told me it was going to go sideways, but I'm glad I didn't. Turns out this was the closure I didn't know I needed. The crowd was still silent, but not the same silence as before. This one was charged, half awe, half disbelief. Someone finally clapped, then another, and suddenly I had applause. Genuine, awkward applause, but still. A few guests even raised their glasses like I'd just given a TED talk on self-respect. I bowed slightly. Thank you, thank you. Be sure to tip your caterers. They worked hard. Tessa's mascara was streaking now, but she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself. The image, the control, the story she'd built. The perfect couple facade had cracked, and the people she cared about most, the ones who lived off perception, had seen the truth unfiltered. Margie tried to guide her toward the stairs, but I stopped them with a single word. Wait. I reached into the briefcase one last time and pulled out a small brown envelope. I almost forgot the birthday gift. I held it out to Tessa. She hesitated, then took it with trembling fingers. What is it? She whispered. Proof of freedom, I said. She opened it. Divorce papers. Signed by me last week, dated, notarized, neat as my conscience. All that's left is your signature, I said, smiling softly. Happy birthday. The crowd collectively gasped again. Seriously, they could have formed a choir at this point. She stared at the papers like they were poison. You already? Yep, I said. See, when someone stops speaking to you from love, you learn to speak to them from logic. And logic says it's better to end a game you can't win. Ryan finally muttered, This is insane, and started toward the door. Yeah, I said, go ahead and leave, Romeo. The audience has seen enough of your season. I picked up my champagne again, savoring the silence. You know, I said to no one in particular, there's something liberating about being the villain in someone else's story. You stop performing, you stop apologizing. You just live. Margie hissed something about shame, but her voice barely registered. Everyone's attention was still on Tessa, this woman who had walked into the evening expecting admiration and left with consequences. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence she left behind said it all. As the crowd began to disperse, I could hear the whispers. Did you know he owned everything? He played them all. Damn, that was legendary. The jazz band quietly packed up, and one of them even gave me a thumbs up on the way out. The caterer approached timidly. Mr. Garner, what do we do with the cake? I smiled. Cut it. Serve it. We've already had enough drama. Let's at least have dessert. When the last guest left, I stood alone in the wreckage of glitter, wine glasses, and shattered illusions. The house was quiet again. Peaceful, even. I looked at the cake, triple-layer red velvet with cream cheese frosting. Perfect, untouched. Just like everything else I'd built for a woman who only ever wanted the spotlight, not the substance. So I grabbed a fork, sat on the couch, and ate directly from the cake plate. The first bite was sweet. The second was freedom. By the third, I was laughing. Not out of joy, not out of madness, but out of the sheer absurdity of it all. Because in that silence, broken only by the sound of my fork scraping frosting, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness or closure, but the kind that comes from finally, unapologetically choosing yourself. And damn, it tasted good. There's a special kind of quiet that happens after a war, the type where everyone's still alive, but nobody wants to make the first sound. That was the air I woke up to the next morning. You know that eerie stillness when you open your eyes and your brain's like, was that all a dream? Yeah, well, spoiler, it wasn't. The house looked like the aftermath of a corporate scandal. Empty wine glasses, wilted flowers, and one deflated balloon with Happy Birthday Queen barely hanging on to life. I stepped over it, grabbed some coffee, and stood in the living room, where just 12 hours earlier, my entire marriage had been disassembled in front of an audience. It was poetic, really. For years, Tessa had loved putting on a show. She just didn't expect me to give it an ending. I took a sip of coffee and smiled to myself. Not one of those Evil mastermind smiles, more like the tired grin of a guy who finally canceled a subscription he'd been guilt-tripped into keeping. The silence felt good, almost cleansing. But I wasn't done yet. Because if life was going to throw me humiliation as a party theme, I was going to return the favor with fireworks. By noon, Tessa was back. I heard the front door open, the click of her heels on the tile. "Miles," she called out softly. Her tone dipped in that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. I didn't answer. Let her wander. Let her feel small in the house she thought she ruled. She found me sitting at the dining table, laptop open, typing away. Her makeup was gone, her hair undone, and her pride had apparently been left wherever Ryan dropped it last night. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Sure," I said without looking up. "Do you want to talk before or after you sign the papers?" She flinched. "Miles, please don't do this. Last night was—" "Honest?" I finished for her. "Yeah, I know. It's rare for you, so I made sure to record the moment." She rolled her eyes. "You humiliated me." "Correction," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "You humiliated yourself. I just brought a PowerPoint." She sat across from me, folding her arms. "You think this makes you look powerful?" "No," I said, closing the laptop. "It makes me look done. There's a difference." I pulled an envelope from my briefcase, the same one from the night before, and slid it across the table. "You said you wanted a birthday surprise, so here it is." She stared at it suspiciously. "What is it this time? Another receipt?" "Nope," I said. Divorce papers, signed, dated, filed." Her jaw tightened. "You already filed?" "Last week," I said. "You were busy in Miami with your coworker, remember? Figured I'd use that time productively." She stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "You're just going to throw away everything we built?" I laughed. "Everything I built, you mean? The house, the accounts, the car, hell, even the dog prefers me. What exactly are you bringing to the table besides drama and a maxed-out Amex?" Her lips trembled for a second, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But then she said it, those 5 words that extinguished any remaining mercy I might have had. "You'll regret this someday." I leaned back in my chair, taking a long sip of coffee before replying. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'll regret not doing it sooner." She stood abruptly, snatching up the envelope. "You can't just end things like this." "I already did," I said, nodding toward the door. "And by the way, you might want to start looking for a new place. The house is officially part of the Reed family trust now. Charitable, not marital. So technically, you're trespassing." Her eyes widened. "You what?" I smiled. "Yeah, the house, the cars, and the accounts. They're all in the trust now. In 30 days, ownership transfers to the foundation I set up. It's dedicated to helping single fathers rebuild their lives after toxic marriages. Thought I'd honor the cause properly." She blinked like I'd just spoken another language. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I said. "You see, I realized last night, money's great, but peace? That's priceless. And I've been bankrupt in peace for years." She started pacing, muttering something about lawyers, but I was already a step ahead. "Don't waste your time calling your dad," I said. "He's still trying to figure out how to make his next mortgage payment. Turns out, yelling at your son-in-law isn't great for business when your son-in-law owns your loan." Her expression twisted into something between fury and disbelief. "You're cruel." I shrugged. "No, just efficient." That's when she threw the envelope at me. It hit my chest and fell onto the table. "You think this makes you a man?" she snapped. "No," I said evenly. "This makes me a man who finally learned how to stop financing his own humiliation." She stormed toward the door, but I wasn't done. "Oh, and Tessa," I called out. "Tell Ryan I said congratulations. He's technically homeless now, too." She froze. "What do you mean?" I smiled, standing. "The house isn't mine anymore, remember? It's the trust's. Which means when the deed transfers next month, all guests, including freeloading boyfriends, will have 30 days to vacate. So unless he wants to share the guest room at your parents' place, he might want to start budgeting." Her face was priceless. Pure disbelief, coated in rage. "You bastard! You keep saying that like it's a bad thing," I said, pouring myself another cup of coffee. "Now go on. You've got a lot of packing to do." She left without another word, slamming the door so hard the wall art rattled. I sat there for a long minute, letting the silence settle again. It was beautiful, really. The quiet of closure. The kind of peace that doesn't come easy but hits deep when it finally does. That night I called Eli. "You alive?" he said the second he picked up. "Barely," I replied. "You made the news, man," he said, laughing. "Someone uploaded a clip of last night. The caption says, 'When the husband brings receipts.' It's got like 100,000 views already." I laughed so hard I nearly choked. "You're kidding." "Nope. Bro, you're a legend. Half the comments are calling you King Miles." "King Miles," I repeated, chuckling. "Well, I've been called worse." After we hung up, I stepped out onto the patio, staring at the city lights. It was funny. After years of chasing approval from people who never thought I was enough, I finally stopped caring, and suddenly I felt more than enough. I thought about the last 10 years of my marriage, the dinners where she scrolled through her phone, the vacations where she called them work trips, the way her family looked at me like I was the plus one at my own life. And yet here I was, still standing, still smiling, with a full cup of coffee and zero apologies. The next day, I called my lawyer to finalize the property trust paperwork. "Are you sure you don't want to keep the house in your name?" he asked. "Positive," I said. "I don't need reminders of a past I already buried." "Fair enough," he said. "You're doing good work, though. The foundation's going to help a lot of guys." "That's the plan," I said. "Let something good come out of the wreckage." That evening, I met Eli for dinner. He raised a glass to me. "To freedom," he said. "To peace," I corrected. "Freedom's loud. Peace is quiet." He grinned. "Still poetic, huh?" "Nah," I said, smiling. "Just finally sober." When I got home that night, I found one last message waiting for me, an email from Tessa. The subject line read, "We can still fix this." I didn't even open it. I just deleted it, emptied the trash folder, and shut the laptop. Some things don't need answers, they need endings. So I poured myself a drink, turned on some old blues, and leaned back on the couch. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel heavy. No anxiety, no resentment, just clarity. The kind that only comes when you realize the greatest gift you can ever give yourself isn't revenge or validation, it's peace of mind. And mine, finally, was untouchable. You ever wake up and realize the drama you survived last night is now trending in group chats? Yeah, that was me, sipping my coffee on a peaceful Saturday morning, scrolling through my phone like a man who just discovered he'd accidentally gone viral. Apparently, someone at the party, probably one of Tessa's influencer cousins with too much time and too little self-awareness, had uploaded a video of the birthday meltdown. The caption? "When the husband brings receipts." It had hit over 500,000 views overnight. My phone was blowing up. Texts, calls, memes, even a few marriage counselors sliding into my DMs like, "We can help you heal. Please." The only therapy I needed was a tall Americano and the knowledge that every Washington, Tessa's proud, image-obsessed family, was currently choking on their own reputation. The family group chat, which, yes, they stupidly kept me in, was on fire. Her mom, Margie, had typed paragraphs about betrayal and disgrace. Her father, Mr. Darnell, had written something about taking legal action, which was hilarious considering he still owed me 2 months on his loan payment. And Tessa? She'd gone radio silent. Classic move, she'd always disappeared when accountability showed up. By noon, my doorbell rang. I opened it expecting maybe a reporter or an apology. Instead, it was Ryan. Yeah, that Ryan, the shiny suited homewrecker from the party, looking like life had just kicked him in the teeth and then took his wallet for good measure. "What do you want?" I asked, not even pretending to hide my disgust. He exhaled sharply. "I came to talk." "You got about 30 seconds before I remember I own pepper spray." He rolled his eyes. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." I'd laughed so hard I had to hold onto the doorframe. "Oh, please, you were at her house, in her living room, with her husband standing right there. What did you think I was, the butler?" He sighed. "She told me you two were basically done. She said you'd moved out emotionally." "Moved out emotionally," I repeated, nodding. "That's rich. She must have pulled that one straight from the cheater's handbook." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I'm not proud of what happened, okay? She told me things, lies, I guess. But last night, you made me look like an idiot." I smirked. "No, Ryan, you made you look like an idiot. I just gave the audience a better view." He shifted awkwardly. "I lost my job this morning." I blinked. "Oh?" "Yeah," he muttered. "HR called. Apparently someone sent them the video. Said it was unprofessional conduct. The company's all about reputation and optics, so..." He trailed off. "Let me guess," I said. "They opted you out." He glared at me, but there wasn't much fire left in him. "You really think you're the hero in this story? No, I said, smiling faintly. I think I'm the plot twist. I started to close the door, but he stopped it with his hand. She's lost too, you know. Her firm suspended her this morning. I raised an eyebrow. For what? Being too fabulous? For lying about a client relationship, he said, grimacing. Guess corporate ethics didn't find her little side romance as charming as she did. For a second, I felt a flicker of something, maybe pity, maybe poetic satisfaction. Either way, I didn't let it show. You came all the way here to tell me that? He shrugged. Maybe to apologize, maybe to say, I get it now. I studied him for a moment. He looked defeated, like a man who just realized karma doesn't take appointments. It walks in unannounced. Apology accepted, I said finally, on one condition. What's that? Stay gone. Don't text her. Don't show up here again. Don't turn this into another sob story. You're not the victim, Ryan. You're just a subplot that ended early. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. And with that, he left. No smug grin, no bouquet, no fake promises. Just silence and the sound of my door clicking shut. I walked back to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of coffee, and toasted the air. To poetic justice, I muttered. By afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was Eli. Bro, he said, laughing before I even answered. You've got the internet eating out of your hand. There's a remix of your speech set to a trap beat. You're joking, I said. Nope. And someone edited clips of you holding the divorce papers with the caption, proof or it didn't happen. You're practically a folk hero. Great, I said, deadpan. That's exactly what I needed, to be the poster boy for betrayed husbands. Ah, man, Eli said. You're the new symbol of self-respect. People are calling you the receipt king. Fantastic, I muttered, pinching the bridge of my nose. Do I at least get royalties? That evening, I decided to take a walk downtown, just to clear my head. Fresh air, no jazz bands, no fake smiles. The city looked different when you weren't dragging guilt behind you. I ended up in a small coffee shop I used to visit before marriage had turned me into an errand boy. The barista, a young woman with a sleeve tattoo and a kind smile, recognized me from the video. Hey, you're that guy, she said, eyes wide. The one who roasted his cheating wife at the party. I blinked. That's how people are introducing me now? She grinned. Don't worry, you're kind of a legend. Coffee's on the house. I couldn't help but laugh. Guess honesty pays after all. I sat by the window, sipping my coffee and watching the evening traffic glide by. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. The preview said, we need to talk. I didn't even need to open it. I already knew it was Tessa. I ignored it. Another buzz. Please, Miles, just 5 minutes. Then another. It's important. I sighed. It was either closure or chaos, and frankly, I was curious which. I texted back, you have 5 minutes. Use them wisely. She arrived 20 minutes later, wearing sunglasses like that would hide her shame. She sat down across from me, looking smaller than I remembered. You're enjoying this? She said quietly. Not the way you think, I replied. You humiliated me, she whispered. You exposed everything. No, Tessa, I said. You hid everything. I just turned the lights on. She took off her glasses, revealing swollen eyes. I lost my job, I nodded. Ryan told me. He came here? Briefly, I said. He's learning humility. You two have something in common now. She frowned. You think this makes you better than me? I shrugged. No, just lighter. She leaned forward, her voice trembling. I made a mistake. You made several, I said. Cheating, lying, treating me like a placeholder, and forgetting that loyalty doesn't come with a price tag. I didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't mean to get caught, I said flatly. She sat back, defeated. You're really not giving us another chance? Tessa, I said softly. Second chances are for accidents, not choices. For a moment, we both sat in silence, the sound of the espresso machine filling the void between us. I still love you, she said finally. I smiled sadly. Then love the memory of me, because that's all that's left. She didn't argue, she just nodded, wiped her eyes, and stood up. Goodbye, Miles. Goodbye, Tessa, I said. And hey, next time you fall in love, try picking someone who doesn't already have a ring collection. She left without looking back, and I exhaled. For the first time, I didn't feel like a man losing something. I felt like a man reclaiming space. When I got home that night, the house was empty, but not hollow. The air felt different, like it finally belonged to me again. I poured myself a drink, though, sat on the couch, and laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was over. The next morning, I called the caterer. "Hey, it's Miles," I said, "from the birthday party." There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Oh, the famous one. What can I do for you?" "I just wanted to thank your team," I said. "And there was this one assistant, Jasmine, I think. She was great. Tell her she saved the night with her calm." "I'll let her know," he said warmly. "She mentioned you were surprisingly composed for a man in a hurricane." "Guess I finally learned how to build an umbrella," I said. And that's when it hit me. How strange it felt to have no one left to prove myself to. No family politics, no performative love, no battles for validation. Just me, a new beginning, and the sound of my own peace echoing through the walls. The Washington wannabes had officially imploded, and all I had to do to win was walk away. So I did, with my head high, my dignity intact, and not a single regret weighing me down. You know that weird calm after a tornado, when everything's technically still standing, but it all feels permanently rearranged? That's what the weeks after the birthday massacre, as Eli called it, felt like. On the outside, things looked normal again. Coffee brewing at sunrise, inbox full of work emails, city noises humming in the distance. But inside, something had shifted in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was something better, clear. It was like someone had finally wiped the fog off the glass I'd been looking through for years, and suddenly, every red flag, every insult disguised as a joke, every "you're overreacting" replayed in my head with perfect clarity. I could finally see what I'd been living through, a slow bleed of self-worth dressed up as love. The divorce finalized 6 weeks later. Tessa didn't contest it. Her lawyers tried to bluff, but apparently they'd seen the evidence folder and decided mercy was the better strategy. She left with her designer shoes, her empty apologies, and a car I didn't even like. The house officially transferred into the charitable trust, the same one I'd named the Second Wind Foundation. Its mission? To help men, especially fathers, rebuild their lives after messy divorces, financial wipeouts, or family manipulation. Call it poetic, call it petty, call it whatever you want. It was purpose. And for the first time in years, I had plenty of it. Meanwhile, the Washington clan's empire of self-importance was crumbling faster than a sugar cookie and hot tea. Word spread about Mr. Darnell's financial difficulties, thanks to a few timely leaks from sources I may or may not have encouraged. Margie's boutique, the luxury lifestyle store she bragged about like it was Chanel, closed its doors 2 weeks later. Her farewell Instagram post read, "Stepping back to focus on family and self-growth," which roughly translates to "the creditors found me." I won't lie, I laughed, out loud. Twice. Tessa tried to keep her image polished for a while. She posted filtered selfies with captions like, "Sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings." But social media's got a short attention span, and people moved on faster than she expected. Her comments turned from "Stay strong, queen," to "Girl, weren't you the one from that video?" Faster than you could say algorithm. Eventually, she went offline. Guess she had learned that public sympathy doesn't pay rent. As for me, I rebuilt quietly. Went back to coding, started a new app project, something designed to help small business owners track finances without bleeding cash on overpriced consultants. Irony, right? A man once called financially irresponsible by his wife, now teaching others how to stay afloat. The early investors were interested, the numbers looked good. But the best part wasn't the profit, it was the peace. My mornings belonged to me again. No one asking where I was, who I texted, why I didn't smile enough in pictures, just me, my coffee, and a playlist that didn't include the sound of someone's mother criticizing me. Eli dropped by often. "Man," he said one night over beers, "I still can't believe you pulled that off. You're like the Batman of breakups." "Nah," I said, smirking. "Batman still wears armor. I just took off mine," he laughed. "You sure you don't miss her? Not even a little?" I thought about that for a second. You don't miss someone you've already buried emotionally. You just miss the idea of who they pretended to be. He nodded. "Deep," he said. "Tragic, but deep." 2 months after the divorce, something unexpected happened. I got an email from Jasmine, the caterer's assistant from that chaotic night. She'd sent a simple message. "Hey, I hope it's not weird that I'm reaching out. You handled that night with grace. Most people would have set the house on fire. Coffee sometime? I stared at the screen for a long minute, smiling without realizing it. And she'd been there that night, saw the chaos up close, saw me at my lowest, and apparently didn't flinch. We met a few days later at a small bakery downtown. She was just like I remembered, warm, funny, and grounded in a way most people forgot how to be. We talked for hours, not about what happened, but about everything else. Work, music, life, bad reality TV. She told me she was working toward opening her own catering company someday. I told her I'd invest the second she was ready. She rolled her eyes and said, "Let me fail first, Mr. Software Money." I laughed. I hadn't laughed like that in months. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other more. Not in a fairy tale, movie montage way. Just easy, real. And without pretense. No games, no judgment, no walking on eggshells. She didn't care about my money or my past, just the man sitting in front of her. The one who'd been through hell and come out on the other side, still willing to believe in something good. One evening, she asked me, "Do you ever think about her, Tessa?" I shrugged. Sometimes. Not in the way you'd think. It's more like remembering a story I used to tell myself. She smiled knowingly. "That's healthy. Means you're healing?" I chuckled. "Healing, huh? I prefer upgraded." Life started to feel lighter. I moved into a new apartment. Not too big, not too fancy. Simple, modern, mine. The kind of place where silence felt like comfort, not punishment. I'd wake up early, go for a run, cook breakfast while watching sunlight hit the countertops. It was the kind of peace I didn't know how to appreciate before. Of course, Tessa tried to reappear. Well, they always do. It was a Tuesday morning when I got the text. "Can we talk?" I stared at it, my coffee halfway to my lips. Then another came in. "I made mistakes. I still believe we can fix things." I could practically hear her voice. Soft, guilt-laced, calculated. I typed my response slowly. "We already did. You just didn't like the ending." Then, for dramatic effect, I attached a photo of the trust deed. Caption, "Proof of progress. Hit send. Block the number." That was the last time I ever heard from her. A week later, Jasmine and I attended a small fundraiser for my foundation. Nothing big, just a local event for divorced fathers rebuilding their lives. I gave a short speech, nothing rehearsed, just honest. "People think divorce is about losing," I said, "but sometimes it's about gaining yourself back. You don't realize how much of yourself you gave away until you stop giving it to someone who doesn't see its value." The applause that followed wasn't loud, it was real. And when Jasmine squeezed my hand afterward, I knew I didn't need validation from anyone else. That night, I stood outside under the city lights, breathing in the quiet hum of possibility. The chaos was gone. The drama was gone. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure, neatly wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes closure comes in the form of peace, coffee that tastes better when you make it yourself, and laughter that doesn't feel forced. It comes in small beginnings disguised as ordinary days. So yeah, the Washington wannabes got their fallout, and I got something better. I got myself back. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the only happy ending worth having. A year later, I threw a dinner. Not a party, not a social event, not even a gathering, just dinner. 6 people, 2 bottles of wine, 0 drama. The invite list was short and peaceful. Eli, his girlfriend, Jasmine, 2 of my coworkers who actually liked me, and me. That was it. No caterers, no photographers, no live jazz band trying to make small talk while someone's life collapsed. Just laughter, good food, and people who didn't need me to prove anything. It wasn't lost on me that exactly a year ago, this same night, I'd stood in that very living room hosting the most chaotic birthday in suburban history. Now that house was gone, technically owned by the foundation, but in some poetic twist, we were having dinner in my new apartment, which, despite being smaller, somehow felt more mine than that mansion ever did. The apartment was minimalist. Sleek, gray walls, black furniture, 1 framed photo of me and Jasmine at the foundation launch, and an open kitchen that didn't double as a battlefield. The night was easy. Eli cracked jokes, Jasmine cooked like she was auditioning for Food Network, and I played bartender, which meant overpouring wine like a benevolent dictator. "Man," Eli said between bites, "this is a glow-up. Last year at this time, you were trending for ruining your wife's birthday, And now you're, what? A philanthropist, a CEO, and apparently a decent host. I smirked. I contain multitudes. You contain trauma, he corrected, and apparently amazing lasagna. Jasmine laughed, wiping her hands. Don't encourage him. He'll start thinking he's Gordon Ramsay. Hey, I said, pointing at her with my fork. If Ramsay ever had to deal with a wife who weaponized jazz bands, he'd understand my greatness. The laughter filled the room, the kind that starts small and ends with everyone out of breath. It was light, unforced, genuine. Somewhere between the jokes and the clinking glasses, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. For years, every smile I gave had a quiet anxiety behind it, wondering when it'd all crash again. Now, no weight, no performance, just peace. After dessert, we sat on the balcony. The city stretched out below us. All golden lights and distant noise. Eli leaned back in his chair. You ever hear from her? He asked carefully. Tessa, I said. Yeah, once, about 3 months ago. Email titled, I'm sorry, but he raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, but she still wanted something? Bingo, I said, taking a sip of wine. She wanted a fresh start, said she'd been doing a lot of therapy and was learning accountability. And you? Jasmine asked quietly, curious but kind. What did you say? I smiled, leaning my head back. I replied with a screenshot of the foundation website under the page where it lists our mission, dedicated to helping men recover from emotionally exploitative relationships. Then I wrote, we're full this quarter. The group burst out laughing and Eli nearly spilled his drink. You're evil, man. No, I said, chuckling. I'm healed. There's a difference. As the night went on, the conversation shifted from jokes to memories, and somewhere in there, Eli said, you know, if it weren't for that disaster, none of this would have happened. The foundation, the new app, Jasmine, you'd still be playing the nice husband role. I nodded slowly. Yeah, funny how destruction clears space for real things to grow. Jasmine gave me that look, soft, knowing, the kind that says, you're not your scars anymore. And she was right. For so long, I defined myself by the things that went wrong. The betrayal, the humiliation, the endless mental gymnastics of trying to be enough for someone who'd already made up their mind that I wasn't. But somewhere between that birthday party and this quiet dinner, I stopped living in reaction to someone else's version of me. After everyone left, I stood at the sink washing dishes. Old habit, I used to hate it. Tessa would always say, you're doing it wrong, and take over just to complain about how hard she worked. Now, it was my favorite ritual. There was something calming about the routine, the warm water, the clinking plates. Simple on rounding. When I finished, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, stepped out onto the balcony again, and watched the city breathe. It's strange how peace can feel foreign after chaos. I remember thinking for years that excitement equaled happiness. That if life wasn't loud, it wasn't worth living. But quiet turned out to be the most luxurious thing I'd ever owned. I checked my phone, no messages, no demands, no emotional booby traps, just notifications from the foundation's social media. A few thank you messages from single dads we'd helped. One wrote, you gave me hope when my world burned down. Thank you. That hit me harder than I expected. Because it reminded me that sometimes the pain you survive becomes someone else's survival guide. I'd made peace with the past, but that didn't mean I erased it. I kept one reminder tucked in my desk drawer, a single photo from that infamous birthday. Me, in a suit, standing slightly in the background while Tessa smiled at the camera, oblivious that her whole performance was about to implode. I didn't keep it for nostalgia. I kept it as proof. Proof that I could stand in the middle of chaos and not lose myself again. Proof that the man in that picture, though tired and naive, was strong enough to walk through fire and come out with humor intact. A few weeks later, the foundation hosted its first major fundraising gala. Nothing fancy, just a modest event at a downtown venue. I gave another speech, more confident this time, more me. They say revenge is sweet, I told the crowd, but honestly, knin. Peace tastes better. You can't post peace on Instagram. You can't flex it at brunch. But you can feel it every morning when you wake up without dread. That's success. The applause was warm, but what got me was the look Jasmine gave me from the audience. Like she saw not the man who'd been broken, but the man who'd rebuilt himself. After the event, one of the guests approached me, a middle-aged guy, recently divorced. "I saw your video," he said, "that birthday thing. You handled it with dignity." I laughed. Dignity might be a stretch, but thanks. He shook his head. "No, man. You turned pain into purpose. Not everyone can do that." I smiled. Guess we all find our punchlines eventually. Later that night, Jasmine and I took a walk through the quiet city streets. "You ever think about what would have happened if none of it blew up?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "I'd probably still be apologizing for things I didn't do, still paying for peace I'd never get. Sometimes the explosion is the only way out." She nodded. "Still, you're lucky. Not everyone gets a second chance." I looked at her, my voice low but certain. "I didn't get a second chance, Jasmine. I built one." We walked in silence for a while after that, her hand brushing mine, the night air cool but gentle. And as we passed a couple arguing outside a restaurant, voices sharp, full of that same old pride and poison, I smiled faintly. Once upon a time, that was me, trying to win a war that only existed because I refused to leave the battlefield. Now, I just kept walking. A few months later, I got word through a mutual friend that Tessa had moved out of state. Rumor was she'd tried to start over, some consulting gig in Dallas, but it didn't last. I didn't feel joy or pity, just nothing. Which honestly was the best feeling of all. Because indifference isn't coldness, it's closure wearing sunglasses. On the 1-year anniversary of the infamous party, I found myself at the same bakery where I'd first met Jasmine. The same corner table, the same coffee order. Only this time she was across from me, scrolling through her tablet, showing me mock-ups of her catering company's website. "You think Jasmine and Cody sounds too simple?" she asked. "No, I said. "Sounds real. You don't need fancy when you've got substance." She smiled. That should be your motto." "Please," I said. "I retired from slogans after Happy Birthday, my queen." We both laughed so hard the barista gave us a look. That night, back home, I opened a fresh journal and wrote one line. The best revenge is not living well. It's living without explanation. Then I closed it, poured another drink, and leaned back in my chair, the city humming beneath my window. People always talk about closure like it's some final moment where everything clicks. Truth is, closure's not an event. It's a series of quiet choices. It's deleting the messages you'll never get answers from. It's laughing again without checking who's watching. It's saying no without guilt. It's realizing that sometimes you win simply by not participating in their chaos anymore. So, yeah, maybe the world saw me as the guy who dropped truth bombs at his wife's birthday, but me, I saw a man who finally stopped mistaking pain for loyalty. And as I sat there, glass in hand, city lights flickering below, I couldn't help but chuckle. Because the last laugh wasn't loud. It was calm, steady, and entirely mine.